The
Chapter
Vanguard
1
sped
the
off into the
before
vast
storm.
expanse of space.
Captain Alex Rider stood
carrying
alone
its
in the
crew
observation
toward the
deck
next
before the
phase of the
station.
fight. His gaze
Earth's
locked
first strike
on
had been
Earth
successful.
The
But the
blue
war was
planet,
far from over.
once vibrant
As the
and
Vanguard
full of
made
life,
its exit,
now
the crew
felt like
knew
a
one
distant
thing
memory.
for certain.
Frozen
The
in time
Empire's
as humanity's
retaliation would
last
come.
bastion
And
against
Earth's
an
fight for
unrelenting
survival had
enemy.
just
The
entered
stars
a new,
outside
more
seemed
dangerous
indifferent.
phase.
He
Cold
said,
witnesses to the struggle unfolding within Earth's orbit.
He didn't flinch as the hum of the station vibrated beneath his boots. The quiet tension in the air was like an invisible weight pressing down on his shoulders. A decision loomed, one that would change everything. "Sir," a voice broke through his thoughts, sharp and professional. Lieutenant Arya Singh, his trusted second-in-command, entered the room with a data tablet in hand. Her expression was a mix of concern and determination, the same look Alex had seen on countless faces before battle. "We've got a full reading from the outer colonies. The Empire's fleet is moving in. ETA is less than 6 hours." Alex nodded, not surprised by the news. He'd known it was coming. The Galactic Empire had been patient, watching as humanity's resistance grew. But now, they were making their move. Earth, and everything it stood for, was about to face the full might of the Empire. "We have to strike first," Alex said, his voice firm. "We can't wait for them to come to us. We need to hit their supply lines, disrupt their fleet. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop them." Arya raised an eyebrow, glancing at the data tablet. "You're proposing a full-scale attack on their supply convoy? Do you think we have the resources for that?" Alex turned away from the observation window and faced her. His face was a mask of resolve, but the weight of the decision was evident in the tightness of his jaw. "It's our best shot. If we hit them hard, they might rethink their invasion. But if we sit and wait for them to surround us, it's over." Arya hesitated for a moment, the silence between them charged with unspoken thoughts. Finally, she spoke. "I'll get the squad ready. But Alex, this could be a one-way mission. Are you prepared for that?" His eyes met hers, and for the briefest moment, he saw the same uncertainty that flickered in his own heart. But there was no turning back now. "We've all known the risks since the day we started this war. If I have to go down, it'll be fighting." She nodded, knowing better than to argue. "I'll get the plans to the rest of the team. Let's make sure they know what we're up against." Alex stood still for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. The reality of what they were about to do was no longer just a matter of strategy. It was personal. For the past 2 years, he had led this ragtag group of soldiers, scientists, and refugees, all united under a single banner: survival. The resistance was small, but they were relentless. And now, they were about to take their most dangerous step yet. "Make sure we're ready to move in an hour," Alex said, his voice steely. "I'll be in the command center." As Arya left the room, Alex turned back to the window. The calm before the storm had been shattered. It was time to fight. In the command center, Alex was met with the quiet murmur of his officers, each one busy reviewing mission plans or analyzing data streams from across the galaxy. He walked in, his presence commanding attention, and within moments, the room fell silent. "Report," Alex said, moving to the central console. His eyes scanned the data, locking onto the Empire's fleet formation. "Sir," Commander Lawson, a tall, weathered officer, stood at attention. "We've confirmed the location of their convoy. It's a fleet of 5 supply ships, heavily escorted. They're transporting reinforcements and materials for the main invasion force. If we hit them, we'll cripple their ability to sustain the invasion." Alex nodded. "How long before we can engage?" "We've got one window. The convoy is passing through a narrow asteroid belt in about 4 hours. It's the perfect opportunity for a surprise attack. We'll have to move quickly, though. Once we engage, they'll call for reinforcements immediately." Alex's eyes narrowed as he considered the plan. The convoy was heavily guarded, but the asteroid belt provided cover. If they could disable the lead ship, the rest of the fleet would be disorganized. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. "Prepare the strike team," Alex ordered. "Get the Vanguard ready for launch. We'll move in at 0500 hours. Make sure the crew knows what they're walking into." Lawson hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Alex, I know you've led us through some tough situations, but this is different. We're outnumbered and outgunned. If we don't succeed, it could be the end. Alex met his gaze, his eyes hardening. Then we make sure we succeed. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. The crew of Fortis Station scrambled to finalize plans, check equipment, and ensure that every soldier and officer was ready for the mission ahead. Alex moved from one briefing to the next, checking in on each squad, offering words of encouragement where he could, but keeping his focus sharp. He couldn't afford distractions, not now. As the clock ticked down, Alex found himself in his quarters, staring at a small, faded photograph of his family. He hadn't seen them in over a decade, before the Empire came, before Earth fell into chaos. His wife, Maria, had been a scientist working in one of the orbital research stations. His son, Theo, had been just 8 years old when the Empire made its move. He didn't know what had happened to them. He had no way of knowing. The thought of them being lost forever tore at him, but it also fueled his determination. He had made a promise to himself. He would fight for their future, for the future of every human being left in the galaxy. The sound of footsteps outside his quarters brought him back to reality. A soft knock on the door, followed by Arya's voice. "Alex, it's time." He stood up, brushing the photograph into a drawer, locking it away with the memories he couldn't afford to dwell on now. He wasn't a father, a husband, or a son right now. He was a soldier. "Let's move," Alex said, his voice steady. The strike force gathered in the hangar bay, each member clad in battle gear, their faces a mix of determination and nervous anticipation. The Vanguard, the ship they would use for the mission, hummed quietly in the background. Alex boarded the ship first, followed by his team. As the airlock sealed, he took his seat at the command console. "Prepare for launch," Alex ordered. "Sir." Arya's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're clear for departure." As the Vanguard surged into space, Alex took one last look at Earth, his home. The countdown to the Empire's downfall had begun. "You said?" Chapter 2, the Vanguard cut through the cold vacuum of space like a knife through air, its sleek hull reflecting the distant glow of stars. Inside, the hum of the engines and the controlled chaos of the bridge created a tense atmosphere. Alex sat in the command seat, his fingers hovering over the controls, eyes focused on the holographic display in front of him. The convoy was close now, very close. 20 minutes to target. Lieutenant Arya Singh's voice broke through the hum of the ship's engines. She stood beside him, her eyes scanning the data flowing across the screens. "Everything's on track, Captain." Alex nodded, but didn't respond. His mind was already working ahead, calculating possible outcomes, considering every move, every contingency. They couldn't afford any mistakes. The convoy, a mix of supply freighters and heavily armed escorts, would pass through a narrow asteroid belt in less than an hour. That was their window. If they could take out the lead ship, the rest of the fleet would fall into disarray. It was their only chance. "Do we have confirmation on the escorts?" Alex asked, turning to Commander Lawson, who was monitoring the enemy fleet's movements on a separate console. "We've got 5 escorts, all of them armed to the teeth," Lawson replied. "They're experienced. This won't be a walk in the park." Alex's jaw tightened. "We don't have the luxury of a walk in the park. We take them out fast and hard, or we'll be the ones walking." Arya raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. It wasn't the first time Alex had spoken like that. He was all business, especially when the stakes were this high. There wasn't room for sentiment or hesitation. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would approach the convoy under the cover of the asteroid belt, using the debris to mask their approach. The Vanguard was fast and nimble, perfect for this type of hit-and-run operation. But once they engaged, there would be no turning back. The Empire's reinforcements would be on them in seconds. "Shields at maximum," Alex ordered, his voice calm but commanding. "Prepare for immediate engagement. Arya, take the helm." Arya nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls as the Vanguard adjusted its course toward the asteroid field. The ship shook as it entered the debris field, large rocks and ice chunks passing by in a blur. The sensors blinked and buzzed with incoming readings, but Arya kept her focus. She was good under pressure, and Alex had complete trust in her ability to navigate through this chaos. "Shields holding at 95%, Arya reported, her voice steady. "We're clear for the moment." The tension in the ship grew, the crew silently preparing for the inevitable. Every breath felt like it might be the last. Alex clenched his fists. This was it. No turning back. "Captain," Lawson's voice came through. "We've got a visual on the convoy. The lead ship is the Azura, heavily armed but slower than the rest. We can hit her first and disable her engines. That'll buy us time to finish off the escorts." "Agreed," Alex said, his voice hard as steel. "Get ready to fire on my mark." The seconds seemed to stretch into eternity as the Vanguard silently drifted closer to the convoy. Alex's mind was racing, playing out every possible scenario. If they succeeded, they would cripple the Empire's supply lines. But if they failed, Earth's last hope could be gone in a matter of hours. Then the call came. 5 minutes to engagement, Arya announced. Alex stood, his eyes narrowing as the convoy came into view, just beyond the asteroid field. The Azura was clearly visible now, its massive silhouette surrounded by smaller, agile escort ships. The time for hesitation was over. "On my mark," Alex said, his voice cutting through the tension. 3, 2, 1. "Now!" Firing. Lawson shouted. The Vanguard unleashed its first volley of plasma torpedoes, a dazzling flash of light cutting through the darkness of space. The torpedoes homed in on the Azura, striking its shields with a resounding explosion. The lead ship's energy shields flickered, then collapsed under the sustained assault. "Direct hit," Lawson confirmed. "The Azura's shields are down. We're moving in for a final strike." Alex didn't hesitate. "Target their engine core. Arya, take us in closer. We need to disable them now." The Vanguard surged forward, its engines roaring as it closed the distance between them and the now vulnerable Azura. The escort ships scrambled to intercept, but the Vanguard was faster, weaving through the debris with ease. "Enemy escorts incoming," Lawson warned. "They're locking onto us." "Return fire," Alex ordered. "Take out their weapons first." The Vanguard fired again, a series of rapid shots that struck one of the escorts squarely in the rear, sending it spiraling into the asteroid field. But the remaining 4 were closing in fast. One of them fired a warning shot, narrowly missing the Vanguard's port side. "Shields holding at 85%, Arya called out. "We can't keep dodging like this. We need to finish the Azura." Alex knew she was right. The longer they stayed in the fight, the greater the risk of being overwhelmed. But the Azura wasn't out of the fight yet. "Target their engines again," Alex barked. "We need to take them down now." Another round of torpedoes ripped through the void, striking the Azura with a deafening explosion. This time, the ship's engines flared, smoke and fire billowing from the damaged sections. "We've got them," Lawson exclaimed. "The Azura is drifting. They're dead in the water." But there was no time to celebrate. The remaining escorts were upon them. The Vanguard was still outnumbered, and the odds were quickly turning against them. "Engage evasive maneuvers," Alex ordered. "We're not out of the woods yet." Arya banked the Vanguard sharply, avoiding another barrage of enemy fire. The agile ship danced through the asteroid field, dodging incoming blasts as they continued to close in on the remaining escorts. "Focus fire on their weapons," Lawson shouted over the chaos. "We take out their guns, and we can finish them off one by one." Another volley of plasma fire hit one of the enemy ships square in its weapon systems. The escort shuddered, its guns going silent. The remaining ships began to pull back, trying to regroup and reassess their tactics. "They're retreating," Arya said, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "They're running." Alex took a deep breath. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like they might just have a chance. The Azura was down, and the escort ships were scattering. "Prepare for extraction," Alex said, his tone still sharp. "We've done what we came for. Let's get out of here before reinforcements show up." As the Vanguard made its escape, weaving through the asteroid field and back into open space, Alex allowed himself a moment of relief. They had struck first, and they had won. But as the adrenaline began to fade, reality set in. This victory was just the beginning. The Empire wouldn't be gone for long. They would come back, and the next fight would be even harder. "Status on the convoy?" Alex asked, turning to Lawson. They're all down, Captain, Lawson confirmed. The Azura is done for, and the escorts are scattering. We bought Earth some time. Alex nodded, but the weight of their next steps still pressed heavily on his mind. Time, but not much. We need to use it wisely. Ship, the tension was palpable, but there was no celebration. Not yet. The battle had been a success. Yes, but it was just one step in a much larger, much deadlier conflict. And Alex Rider knew the Empire would not let this defeat slide. They would retaliate with fury. As the Vanguard docked with Fortis Station, Alex wasted no time. He headed straight for the command center, his boots echoing down the sterile, metallic hallways. The sounds of the crew scrambling to secure the ship and report status updates faded behind him as his mind raced. The Empire would hit back hard. He could feel it in his bones. Inside the command center, his senior officers were already gathered. They had been waiting for him. He didn't need to say much. His presence alone was enough to silence the room. Lawson, Arya, and several other key commanders looked up as he entered, their faces a mix of exhaustion and uncertainty. Report, Alex commanded, taking his place at the central console. Captain, the convoy is destroyed, Lawson confirmed, his voice flat. But the Empire isn't just going to take it lying down. We're seeing signs of mobilization from their forces. They've dispatched a larger fleet toward our outer colonies. If we don't act quickly, they'll have the resources to push through and wipe us out. Alex's heart sank. The message was clear. The Empire was regrouping, and they would come for Earth with everything they had. Earth's victory was small in comparison to the scale of the Empire's might. What's our status? Alex asked, his voice steady despite the rising tide of pressure. We've sustained minor damage to the Vanguard and lost 3 crew members in the attack, Arya replied. But we're operational. The bigger problem is our supplies. We can't keep up with the pace of their offensive without reinforcements, and our intel suggests they're already heading toward the outer colonies. Alex ran a hand through his hair. The reality of their situation was dawning on him. They had made their move, but the cost of this war would be immense, and every victory would only bring them closer to a deeper, more deadly confrontation. So what's our next move? Alex asked, his voice laced with resolve. We've been working on a counteroffensive, Lawson interjected. The Empire's fleet is still divided, and they're underestimating us. But we don't have much time. If we hit them now, before their reinforcements arrive, we stand a chance. We've identified a weak point in their supply chain, a convoy of freighters transporting critical military assets to their main fleet. If we can intercept and destroy those ships, we might cripple their ability to sustain their invasion. Alex's eyes narrowed as he considered the option. Another high-risk mission. But if they didn't act, Earth's colonies would fall within days. The decision wasn't hard. We go after it, Alex said firmly. Prepare the Vanguard. Arya, get us ready for launch. Yes, sir, she replied immediately, already moving to the control panel. Lawson hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Captain, we need to talk about the risks here. We're already low on manpower and resources. If we take this mission and fail... We won't fail, Alex interrupted, his voice cold with certainty. We can't. This is Earth's only chance to turn the tide. We hit them fast, and we hit them hard. No hesitation. The room fell silent. Lawson's eyes lingered on Alex for a moment. Then he gave a nod, understanding the weight of the decision. The room's mood shifted from doubt to a shared sense of grim determination. The crew knew the stakes. They had no illusions about the risks involved. But they had already committed to this war, and there was no turning back now. As the Vanguard prepared for another mission, the air inside the ship was tense, filled with a quiet anticipation. The crew moved with practiced precision, the rush of adrenaline already beginning to set in as the ship powered up for launch. Alex stood by the command console, watching the team work, but his mind was already racing ahead. Arya's voice brought him back to the present. We're ready, Captain. All systems go. The Empire's convoy is within range. We'll be on them in 2 hours. Alex nodded. The plan was simple. Intercept the convoy before it could link up with the main fleet. They'd have the element of surprise, again, but only for a short window of time. Once they engaged, the Empire would know who was responsible, and their retaliation would come swiftly. But if they succeeded in this mission, it could delay the Empire's advance long enough to give Earth's forces time to regroup and rebuild. Good. Let's move. The Vanguard shot out of Fortis Station, heading straight for the convoy's location. The ship's sleek form cut through the vacuum of space, its engines humming with quiet power. Inside, Alex and his crew were silent, each member focused on their tasks. As they neared the target area, the ship's radar system began to hum with activity. The convoy was ahead, a small fleet of freighters guarded by a handful of escort ships. They were still unaware of the Vanguard's presence, their systems not yet alerted to the approaching threat. Approaching target, Arya called from the helm. "We've got a clean shot. Their escorts are on the perimeter, but we can take them out before they realize we're here." Alex stood up from his chair and walked to the forward window. The convoy was close now. The Vanguard had the advantage of surprise, but it wouldn't last long. He could feel the familiar pressure in his chest, the weight of the mission pressing down. He'd led his crew through one strike already, but this one felt different. This time, the stakes were higher. Failure wasn't an option. "On my mark," Alex said, his voice quiet but sharp. "Get ready." A moment of tense silence passed. Then, with a command from Alex, the Vanguard released its first volley of plasma torpedoes. The bright streaks of light shot out from the ship, a cascade of destruction aimed at the nearest escort ship. The explosion that followed was deafening, and the first escort ship was torn apart in an instant. "Target the remaining escorts," Alex ordered. "No mercy. We're going straight for the freighters." The Vanguard surged forward, its weapons firing with precision. Each shot hit its mark, and the remaining escorts were quickly neutralized. The freighters, now vulnerable, began to scatter in an attempt to flee, but they were too slow. Alex's focus was sharp. Take out their engines. Disable the convoy before they can escape. The ship's weapons roared to life, striking the freighters with pinpoint accuracy. Within moments, the convoy's defensive capabilities were crippled, and the freighters were disabled, drifting helplessly in space. Alex watched as the final ship exploded in a fiery burst, sending debris scattering into the void. "Mission accomplished," Lawson said, his voice tinged with relief. For a moment, there was silence in the ship's command center. The crew knew the battle had been a success, but there was no time to relax. The war was far from over. Alex glanced at the wreckage of the convoy, a cold realization settling over him. "It's just the beginning," he muttered under his breath. He turned to the crew. "Prep for extraction. We've made our mark, but we're not done yet." Chapter for the silence of space was broken by the rumble of the Vanguard's engines as it raced toward the heart of enemy territory. The ship cut through the void with a deadly purpose, its crew working in seamless harmony. Alex Ryder stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of him, calculating every move, every maneuver. The stakes had never been higher. This was their moment, the moment to cripple the Empire once and for all. "We've confirmed the location of the Empire's flagship," Lawson said from his station, his voice calm but tense. "It's on a direct course to Earth's outer colonies, heavily guarded. If we're going to do this, it has to be now." Alex nodded, his face tight with resolve. "Prepare for attack. We'll hit them hard, hit them fast. No hesitation." His command was met with a chorus of "Aye, Captain." The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, each member knowing their part in this critical mission. Arya was already at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls, guiding the Vanguard through the empty expanse of space with deadly precision. "ETA to the flagship. 15 minutes, Arya reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Good. Once we're in range, we'll engage their escorts first. We need to disrupt their coordination before taking on the flagship," Alex said, his voice firm. His eyes flicked to the forward view, a million thoughts running through his mind. They had taken down convoys, damaged supply lines, and crippled smaller fleets, but this was different. This was the heart of the Empire, their flagship, the symbol of their power. The Vanguard was small, agile, and quick, but the Empire's flagship was massive, armed to the teeth, and well defended. The odds were stacked against them, but Alex knew they didn't have the luxury of time. Earth's fate depended on this mission. If they failed, the Empire would wipe out everything they had fought for. 5 minutes, Arya called out. Enemy ships closing in. We're entering their defensive perimeter. Alex gripped the edge of the console. Brace for impact. Shields at maximum. The ships shuddered as they neared the perimeter of the Empire's defenses. Sensors began to blare, indicating enemy ships locking onto them. It was now or never. The Vanguard was nearly at the point of no return. They were committed to this attack, and there was no way out once they started. Engage evasive maneuvers, Alex commanded. Take out their fighters first. We need to clear the skies before we go after the flagship. The Vanguard danced through space, dodging enemy fire, its weapons returning blasts of plasma that sent enemy fighters spiraling into the void. The crew was in sync, responding to every new threat with precision. The Empire's ships were formidable, but the Vanguard was faster, and its crew was relentless. 2 minutes to flagship, Lawson reported. The enemy escorts are falling back. They're not going to make it easy. We don't need easy, Alex muttered. We need a clear shot. The Vanguard tore through the enemy ranks, its weapons lighting up the darkness of space. Arya's hands moved like a blur, expertly guiding the ship through the incoming fire, while Alex's commands were swift and decisive. With every blast, another enemy fighter was destroyed, and their path to the flagship grew clearer. Shields at 75%, Arya called out, her voice betraying a hint of tension. We can't take many more hits like that. We're almost there, Alex said, the words a low growl. Keep pushing forward. As they closed in on the flagship, the enemy's heavy artillery came into focus. The massive warship loomed in the distance, a formidable fortress of steel and energy. It was everything the Empire had built, everything they had relied on to control the galaxy. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This was the moment that would determine the fate of Earth. Full speed ahead, Alex ordered. Lock onto their weak spots. We need to disable their weapons and engines. Target their power core. The Vanguard surged forward, the flagship now in their sights. The first barrage of plasma torpedoes struck the enemy's outer shields, flaring brightly in the dark expanse of space. The flagship's weapons returned fire, massive blasts of energy that shook the Vanguard to its core. Alex gritted his teeth. They were taking hits, but they were still in the fight. Shields holding at 50%, Arya reported, her voice unwavering despite the chaos. We've made it past their outer defenses. We're in range for the next strike. Fire again, Alex ordered. Take out their weapons. We can't let them retaliate. The Vanguard unleashed another round of torpedoes, this time striking the flagship's main guns. Explosions rippled across the surface of the massive ship, sending shockwaves through the void. But the flagship wasn't down yet. Its secondary weapons began to fire, smaller but no less deadly. Captain, Lawson said, his voice urgent. They've launched reinforcements. We've got more ships incoming. We won't be able to hold them off much longer. Alex's mind raced. They were running out of time. They had to end this now. Arya, take us in close. Get us to their power core, Alex commanded. We're going for the kill. With a quick maneuver, Arya brought the Vanguard dangerously close to the flagship, narrowly avoiding the incoming fire from the enemy reinforcements. The massive warship loomed ahead, its power core vulnerable. They had one shot. Target their power core, Alex barked. We finish this now. The Vanguard's weapons fired with unrelenting fury, the torpedoes smashing into the flagship's power core with a deafening explosion. The flagship's shields flickered, then collapsed entirely, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, the flagship erupted in a blinding flash of light. Alex's heart skipped a beat as the shockwave hit, sending the Vanguard tumbling through space. Arya fought the controls, keeping the ship steady, but the damage had been done. The flagship was no more. The Empire's symbol of power was reduced to space debris. Captain, Arya said, her voice filled with disbelief. We did it. The flagship is down. They're retreating. Alex leaned back in his seat, his breath heavy. The victory was immense, but but there was no time to rest. The Empire's forces were still out there, and they would regroup. But for now, Earth had a fighting chance. "Good work, everyone," Alex said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "This is just the beginning." As the Vanguard drifted away from the wreckage of the Empire's flagship, Alex felt a surge of hope. They had struck a devastating blow to the Empire, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's resolve, and Earth's fight for survival was just getting started. Chapter 5: The Vanguard drifted through the shattered remains of the Empire's flagship, a once feared symbol of power now reduced to space debris. The crew sat in tense silence, each one processing the magnitude of their success. The victory had been hard-won, but as Alex Rider stared out at the wreckage, he knew the battle was far from over. "Captain," Aria's voice cut through the stillness, her tone more somber than usual. "The Empire's forces are retreating, but we've just received intelligence. They're regrouping. It's only a matter of time before they launch a counteroffensive." Alex nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Empire would never let this defeat go unpunished. But they had struck a significant blow, one that would resonate across the galaxy. For the first time, humanity had proven it could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful military force in existence. "We bought ourselves some time," Alex said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But we can't sit back and wait. We need to keep the pressure on them. If we don't, they'll regroup and come back stronger." Lawson, his ever-reliable commander, spoke up from his station. "Captain, our sensors picked up a fleet massing near the Cova system. They're likely gathering reinforcements. If we don't strike soon, we'll lose the initiative." "We'll go after them," Alex said, his voice firm. "We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. No hesitation." The crew, despite their exhaustion, rallied around him. There was no turning back now. The battle for Earth was far from over, but humanity had just proven it had the strength to win. They could fight back. They could take the fight to the Empire. The Vanguard surged into the vastness of space, its engines roaring to life as it shot toward the Cova system. Alex stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the stars ahead. The stakes were higher than ever. If the Empire managed to consolidate its forces and launch a full-scale assault, Earth wouldn't stand chance. They needed to disrupt their plans, keep the Empire off balance, and prevent them from regrouping. "ETA to Cova system, 20 minutes, Aria reported, her voice cool and controlled. Alex nodded, his mind already turning over the strategy. This time, they wouldn't have the luxury of surprise. The Empire was aware of their capabilities now. They would be ready, but that didn't matter. Alex had one rule when it came to war. You either win or you die. There was no room for second place. "We'll have to hit their reinforcements hard," Alex said, looking over to Lawson. "Get us in position for an attack on their supply ships. We'll cripple their ability to launch a full assault." Lawson didn't hesitate. "Understood. I'll have a team ready." The Vanguard sped toward the Cova system, the cold emptiness of space stretching out before them. Inside the ship, the crew went about their tasks with practiced precision, preparing for the next battle. The hum of the engines and the soft whir of machinery were the only sounds as they neared their target. As the Vanguard entered the Cova system, the enemy fleet came into view. It was a vast collection of ships, dozens of warships, support vessels, and supply freighters, each one bristling with weapons and armor. The Empire had brought its full might to bear, and it was clear that this was their last attempt to crush the rebellion. They had underestimated humanity before, but now they would face the full force of Earth's will. "Captain, we're in range," Aria said, her voice unwavering. "The supply ships are heavily guarded, but we've got an opening." "Target the lead freighter," Alex said. "We disable it, and the rest will scatter." With a quick command, the Vanguard engaged its weapons. A barrage of plasma torpedoes streaked toward the lead freighter, striking it with deadly precision. The ship's shields flickered, then collapsed, and the freighter was torn apart in a burst of light. The Empire's fleet reacted immediately, their ships maneuvering into defensive positions and opening fire. "Shields holding at 70%, Aria reported, her fingers flying across the controls as the ship dodged incoming fire. "We got incoming fighters. Take them down," Alex ordered. "No mercy. We need to clear the way for the rest of our attack." The Vanguard's weapons roared to life as it cut through the enemy fighters, each shot striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Empire's pilots fought back with skill, but they were no match for the Vanguard's speed and maneuverability. In moments, the skies were clear, and the remaining Empire ships were in disarray. "Captain," Lawson called out from his station, "we've got a bigger problem. The Empire's flagship is on its way. They're sending reinforcements to reinforce the supply ships." "Damn it," Alex muttered. The flagship had been a symbol of their strength, and the fact that it was still operational meant the Empire wasn't going down without a fight. "Prepare for a direct assault," Alex said, his voice grim. "We'll take them head-on." The Vanguard hurtled toward the Empire's flagship, the massive warship looming ahead like an immovable wall. It was heavily armed, its cannons bristling with enough firepower to wipe out entire fleets. But Alex wasn't afraid. He had learned long ago that fear had no place in war. The time for fear was over. Now it was time for action. "Arya, take us in close," Alex commanded. "We can't let them get the first shot off." Arya's hands flew over the controls, and the Vanguard dodged and weaved through enemy fire as it closed the distance to the flagship. Plasma bolts streaked past them, some grazing the ship's shields, but the Vanguard pressed on. "Target the flagship's engines," Alex said. "We need to disable them." The Vanguard unleashed a volley of torpedoes, striking the flagship's engines with a powerful blast. The massive ship shuddered, its thrusters sputtering as its engines went offline. The flagship was now crippled, vulnerable. "Finish them off," Alex barked. "Take out their weapons." The Vanguard's weapons tore into the flagship's remaining defenses, disabling its weapons one by one. The Empire's flagship had been reduced to a sitting target, its ability to retaliate shattered. The final blow came when Alex ordered a direct hit on the power core. A massive explosion erupted from within the flagship, and a massive warship was obliterated in a fiery burst. As the wreckage of the flagship floated in space, Alex's crew let out a collective breath. They had done it. The Empire's most powerful symbol had been destroyed, and the galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength. But as the Vanguard sailed away from the remains of the Empire's flagship, Alex knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire would retaliate. They would rebuild. But for now, they had won. "Victory is ours," Lawson said, a rare smile crossing his face. "For now," Alex replied, his gaze hardening. "We've taken down their flagship, but the war is far from over. The Empire won't rest until we're wiped out." He looked out into the vastness of space, the stars glimmering in the distance. The battle for Earth was just beginning, but humanity had proven something that day. They would never go down without a fight.